equal than the others, so we're going to use that policy. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself so that you know a little bit about the journey, and then you can have your questions, your comments, and don't hesitate to say whatever you feel like. There is nothing like a stupid question, and there is nothing like a wrong thing to say. So let me tell you where it all started. Firstly, I was born in Mumbai, as they call it. Well, then thankfully it was Bombay, which is the word I'm more used to saying. When I was 6 months old, we shifted to Delhi. My father is a painter and my mother is a writer. And as a child, what happened was, because my father would paint, he had his studio at home. So he would pretty much cook, clean, and, I thought for recreation, paint. And my mother would go to work. So in a way, I'm really grateful that the role reversal happened very early in my life. That I didn't grow up thinking that mothers have to sit at home and work and do all the household chores, and fathers had to go. It's only later in my life that I realized that that was the norm. So sometimes when you have what they call a different upbringing, you don't realize it when you're in it. It's only when you look back, you look around and you say, wow, I was privileged in many ways. Not because my father was a painter. I sometimes think that, God, I wish my father was a doctor or something. I would have learned more about medicine. When I was at the earthquake place in Gujarat, and there was all this calamity, and the earthquake had just happened, and that's the thought that first came to my mind. Why am I an actor? Why is my father a painter? I wish we had done something more useful that one could be, actually be of help. But anyhow, I think there were definitely advantages. One was that I was exposed to the arts very early. That is, listening to a music performance, watching a dance performance, going to watch a theatre, go to exhibitions. In fact, cinema was not a form of entertainment that I was exposed to. Cinema came into my life much later. But the best thing that I'm truly grateful to my parents is that they gave me a lot of freedom to question. They gave me all the freedom to make the choices. They never told me you have to come first. Today, of course, the success is defined by, I'm sure all of you, whether through your parents, teachers, or generally societal pressure, there is a lot more in academics. But from what I hear and what this wonderful college seems to offer and encourage is not just the academics, but also all other activities. So that's the kind of upbringing that I had, where studies wasn't the only thing. But luckily for my parents, I was a good student. So I did my bachelor's degree. I did it in geography, as your Mr. Sawant. And except that after my BA, I didn't like the subject anymore. And yes, why teachers are so important. I'm so glad that at your Founders' Day, the teachers are really felicitated. That was a slip of the tongue. But because I think the teachers really, in some ways, encourage you to like a subject or dislike. For instance, I really hated maths. That doesn't mean that maths is a bad subject. It just means that probably I wasn't taught, or maybe the teacher wasn't the kind who inculcated that interest in me, and therefore I didn't pursue maths. But I loved geography, and it was really because I had a wonderful teacher in school. But after 3 years, maybe I didn't have so many wonderful teachers, or for whatever reason, I didn't want to carry on with geography. So I told my parents I don't want to study, because this education system in any case doesn't teach you much. I was a bit of a rebel, and there wasn't much to rebel because my parents gave me so much freedom. But when you don't have anything to rebel, you still want to rebel. And one of those silly things that I did was not to paint. Because everyone said, oh, you're Jatin Das's daughter. I mean, among the circle, everybody sort of knew him as an artist, and they all expected me to be an artist. And I said, no, I'm not going to paint. So that's one of the most stupid decisions I took at the age 11, I think, when I said, I'm not going to paint. But when I finished my BA and I was at a crossroad of not knowing what to do an MA in, I told my parents that I want to take a year off. And again, luckily, my parents said, sure, take a year off, but tell us what you really want to do. Of course, there were peers, there were teachers, there were friends, parents. Everybody said, you're going to waste a year. But I can tell you one thing, that was my best year. So if your parents and your teachers are going to scold me for saying this, but I have to say that taking a year off, especially at a juncture when you don't know what you want to do, because all said and done, when we are in school, when we are in college, we just go from one class to the other, not really having the time to pause or not the opportunity to really think, what is it that I love doing? Till then, I pretty much did what I loved doing. I did humanities, even though my teachers said, but you have good marks, you know, you could take science. So I was like, but what has marks got to do with what I want to take? I want to take humanities because I love literature, because I love history, because I love economics and geography. And it was for the love of the subject that I took humanities. But at the end of 3 years, when I didn't know what to do, that year was very good, not because I whiled away time. I wrote to a school called Rishi Valley. It's a residential school in the south, started by J. Krishnamurti, a great philosopher, thinker, educationist. And my brother had studied there for 8 years, and he used to rave about it. I unfortunately didn't get the opportunity to go, so I wrote to them saying, I'm taking a year off, is there something I can do? And they wrote back saying, will you teach the 5th class? And I was like, sure, for 4 months I'll teach the 5th class, except maths. So you can imagine my maths was pretty bad that I didn't even have the confidence of teaching the 5th class. But those 4 months that I spent in Rishi Valley were absolutely fabulous. One, because they had no syllabus till the 8th. So teachers taught not to complete a syllabus. Children learned again not to complete a syllabus or to get marks, but because they enjoyed teaching and they enjoyed learning. So everything was projects, sitting under a tree, almost an idyllic situation. I learned a lot, I taught, and after those 4 months, I traveled around the country. And by the end of that 1 year, I knew what I wanted to do, and that was Masters in Social Work. Till then, actually, this is way back in the early 90s, I didn't even know that there was something called Masters in Social Work. I was almost going to do sociology, but I thought, oh God, again, too much of studies and too much of academic stuff. I wish I could do something where I could interact more with people, because I realized by then that that's what I enjoyed doing. I enjoyed listening, talking, sharing, interacting, doing things together. And, you know, a degree in social work doesn't make you better or worse social worker. But what it does is it exposes you to various realities which maybe we don't otherwise get an opportunity to see. Because all of us come from our little worlds, and our little worlds expose us to things within that. But what MSW did through its field work, it exposed me to lots of different realities. My first year was with a mentally challenged institute where they dealt with mentally challenged children and their parents. Then another year was in a basti, in a slum in Delhi, where I worked on women's issues. End of 2 years, I did my block field work in a tribal village in Orissa. In fact, I decided to do it in Orissa because I thought, you know, I know the language. My father is Oriya, my mother is Gujarati. So I thought it would be easy for me to go there and work with the people. But then when I actually reached the tribal village, I realized they speak a language called Kui, and which had nothing to do with Odia. So I thought, well, you know, that was a bit of a presumption to think that everybody in Odisha must be speaking Odia. I'm sure in Goa, if you go into the interior, the Konkani is different from those who maybe speak in the urban areas, or there are various dialects that probably will die off because there is, you know, it's not been documented, there's not enough information about it. And here we are trying to homogenize everything, we are trying to make everything one language. India must have Hindi as its national language, and there are various other issues. So every experience, I think, opened something. It exposed me to another reality. And the more I think you travel, the more you experience, the more confused, the more aware, the more questioning your mind becomes, the less prejudiced you get, because suddenly you realize that there is no one way. My way is not the only way. There are other ways of doing things. And that's what kept happening. During my college, I also did street theatre. I don't know whether you know what street theatre is. With Safdar Hashmi, who was brutally killed, in fact, while performing a play more than 20 years ago now. And we would do these plays which were on various subjects, like on gender issues, on education, on economic policy, on communalism. So we would evolve the play, then some experts would come and tell us about the subject. We would really sit together and work that play out, and then we would go and perform in different places, whether it was in a basti, in a city, or in a village, or in a college, or in a workplace. And again, it exposed me to different realities.